Scorpio season. Can you feel it? Can you feel the shift in the energy? It's time to go deep. So I'm Bronwyn. I'm a predictive astrologer, and I'm here to bring you astrology that is approachable, that is practical for your life, that is gentle and magical. And today I want to talk about the symbolism of Scorpio. I'll be back later in the week with your Scorpio forecast, don't worry. But today I just wanted to do a little bit of a dive into the myth, story, and symbolism of this really beautiful sign. So you probably know your facts about Scorpio. Scorpio is a fixed water sign, the sign of the still water, the swamps and wetlands that are so rich and fertile, but also full of mystery. Scorpio is the sign that comes after Libra at that time of year in the Northern Hemisphere when we're entering into the dark times. And if we're thinking of this beautiful progression of signs as a kind of heroine's journey or a developmental cycle, we realize that each sign follows on the learning of the last sign. Not only does it provide a sort of antidote to the energy of the sign that it follows, but it also adds to the wisdom that we've gathered in the last season. So the wisdom that we gather in Libra season is the wisdom of social relationship, right? It's the wisdom of the ties in relationship that we can see. It's the places where we come together, not in a superficial way, but on the surface. It's those structures that we build around surface relationships. So we may make relationship in Libra, but then what's the next step after that? Intimacy. We make relationship and then we preserve relationship through going deep together and creating intimacy. And that's the lesson of Scorpio. That is the wisdom of Scorpio season. So think about the season of fall. It begins with Libra, right? The cardinal sign, beginning something. What do we begin? We begin our relationships, our social ties, the beauty on the surface that we see in relationship. Just beginning to learn about the people that we're with. And what's next? How do we sustain that? It's the job of the fixed signs to sustain. Fixed water sustains emotion. So this is the wisdom of Scorpio. It brings us into that sustained, intense, intimate connection in the relationships that we've formed during that cardinal Libra time. Now, I'm not saying that it always follows this pattern every year that we make a relationship in Libra and we deepen it in Scorpio, but I'm saying in a broader sense, in the houses in our own chart, these are the places where we engage in those activities. Socializing, relationship making, maintaining social ties, that happens in the Libra house of your chart, along with other things, but around relationships, that's what happens there. What happens in the Scorpio house of your chart? You find ways to either maintain or sever those relationships through intimacy. Remember that in modern astrology, we associate Scorpio with the 8th house. And the 8th house is the house of shared resources. It's that place in life where things get really sticky because we're sharing what's most important, whether it's genetic material or investment money. There is a lot riding on those shared resources of the 8th house. And that's the kind of relationship work that we do with Scorpio energy. It's where we go deep. It's where we understand our own and others' psyches. It's where, and here's the Mars rulership, it's where we need to exercise courage in order to really go deep. Ask that question of your own chart. Look at your Scorpio house and understand that that is the place in your life where you deepen into intimacy in order to sustain relationship. That is the place in your life and chart where you are required to go deep and understand not only the superficial social bonds that make up relationships, but the deep, powerful, unconscious psychological bonds that make up relationship. So where does that progression happen in your chart? Where are you moving from the social ties of Libra into the deep psychological connections of Scorpio? That's one question you can ask yourself at this time of year, because that's the part of your chart that's activated as we cross this frontier between Libra and Scorpio. So what else about the symbolism of Scorpio? Of course, we are on the Taurus-Scorpio axis, and in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the axis of spring and fall. It's the duality of fertility. I call this the axis of fertility, because both Scorpio and Taurus play such an important role in fertility. They're both traditionally fertile signs. They're earth and water, they're yin. In Taurus, we see those beautiful blooms of the old roses, right? Everything's coming into bloom, the air is fragrant, it's such a beautiful season. But what do you have to do in the fall to assure that your old roses bloom lushly come the next spring? You have to put the compost on them. And that's what we're doing in this season of Scorpio, is creating that compost. We're working with that rich, deep, dark soil that comes from decay, that eventually is going to allow us to blossom. So we do this literally at this time of year when we put horse manure on our roses, but we're also called to do this psychologically at this time of year when we work with the stuff that's sticky and muddy that we don't really want to look at, but that we know is so fertile and important for self-understanding and for our own psychological growth, so that we can grow and blossom into the self that we are meant to be. So that's the other thing to look at. You can look at the Taurus-Scorpio axis in your chart and think about, this is where I compost and this is where I bloom. And remember that they're both really important, and that that's a cycle, because of course the blooms die away and become the compost for the next year. So this is how Taurus and Scorpio are always working together to allow for that beautiful fertility. So there's one more thing that I want to say about Scorpio symbolism today, and that's about the scorpion itself. And one thing that I find so beautiful about this creature and so evocative of what Scorpio really is this biological fact that the exoskeleton of the scorpion is extremely light sensitive. So we know that these are little nocturnal creatures, right? They like to stay out of the way and stay out of the light. But one of the reasons they need to stay out of the light is because they are so exquisitely light sensitive. Their whole body is a primitive eye. And they can even guide themselves by starlight. So there's something really beautiful about that. They're kind of scary looking creatures, but they are like the crab of Cancer, right? These symbols of the water signs. They appear to be really well armored, but that is because they have really soft little bodies underneath. So there's that sensitivity of the water signs with this added magical quality of being able to see in the dark and navigate in the shadows. So if you've ever known somebody that has a lot of Scorpio placements, you know the truth of this symbol, that the Scorpio archetype feels really comfortable working with shadow content and has the wisdom to navigate through those shadows with very little light. And I think this is key to understanding that type. It's not just about, like, pop astrology will lead you to believe it's all about being creepy and shadowy. I don't buy that at all. It's about being exquisitely sensitive to light. These are really creatures that are so aware of the difference between light and darkness that they can navigate even the deepest shadows. So I hope that gives you a slightly different perspective on that take on Scorpio that pop astrology sometimes gives us, that there's actually nothing creepy about this. It takes courage to go into the shadow places, but there's such a brilliance to the Scorpio archetype wherever it shows up in your chart. What it holds is your ability to go deep in relationships. It holds your ability to navigate shadow content and really understand the boundaries between light and dark. And there's a resilience to being able to function with very little light, and a brilliance to that psychological depth that empowers us to move in the shadows. So for the next month, we all get to be honorary Scorpios, and we all get to exercise that ability to move with the light, to be guided by starlight, and to be masters of the shadow realm, full of courage. So wishing you a really beautiful and empowering Scorpio season, and understanding that this is really part of the rich fertility of your life that will allow you to blossom in the future if you embrace the challenges of this season. And I'll be back with more specific forecasts about the Scorpio season 2023, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into the energy of this beautiful sign. So I have created something for you. It's a lecture webinar that I made a couple of years ago about the Scorpio archetype. It's 40 minutes. I incorporate a lot of art, culture, and history of the symbolism of Scorpio and the mythology. And I'd like to offer you that webinar for free. Just sign up to my mailing list and I'll send you a link to view that video. And I think if this little piece has intrigued you, you're going to want to watch the full video so that you can have an even deeper understanding of the Scorpio mythology. So I hope you enjoy that. The link is just underneath the video, and I'll see you soon. Lots of love.